Welcome back to Transcriber from Reddit. Today's topic is a website read that comes from baremarriage.com titled Why Youth Pastors Shouldn't, quote, Date, end quote, Youth Group Members by Sheila Ray Gregoire on August 12th, 2024. As of recording, this has 48 comments, and it's under the Parenting Teens section. Below that, we see an infographic with a teen girl with the arms of what looks to be an older man wrapped around her. Now, the older man could be in his late teens to early 20s. However, what's important to note is the text next to them, which says, why it's not okay for a youth pastor to date and marry a youth group member. Underneath the title is additional text that reads, and why we shouldn't be praising these relationships after the fact. Now down to the main body of the article. It reads as follows. In bold, does it really matter if a youth pastor dates and marries a girl in his youth group? End bold. After all, an age difference of 23 and 17 isn't that big a deal, right? It's illegal for a youth pastor to have sexual contact with a girl or boy in the youth group. Most of us know that. Side note, I did a reaction to a podcast where Mike Hintz was essentially non-apologizing for sexually assaulting a youth group member. Here, what Sheila Ray Gregoire seems to be referencing is a youth group appears to be the same thing, to have sexual contact with someone in youth group. But she goes on to say in bold, but what if it's not sexual contact, end bold? What if it's just dating and then what if it's just dating and then later marrying once they're out of high school? That's actually quite common, and people don't seem to be as upset about it. Quite frankly, I shouldn't have to write this post because we should all agree that this is wrong. Side note, to recap, this is not sexual contact with someone in the youth group. When they're in the youth group, this is contact with them in terms of marriage after they've aged out, so to speak, of the youth group. I continue reading. But so often, marriages of big-name pastors actually started like this, and so people find themselves defending such relationships. And so I want to write a post today explaining why a youth pastor, camp leader, or camp counselor dating a teen under their leadership is not okay. In bold, many of us approach the youth pastor/youth member dating thing from purely an age perspective. End bold. And we can all picture mature 17 and 18-year-old girls who would be fine to date a 23 or 24-year-old. But there's more going on here we need to take into account. I'm going to write the rest of this post as if it's a male youth pastor and a female youth group member, since that's the most common scenario. But this would apply to a female youth pastor as well. Side note, I would also personally apply the same principles to female teachers and male teachers, especially when they come from parochial schools. In bold, 5 reasons why 20-something church leaders dating teenagers is both a bad idea and a red flag. Side note, the word teenagers is misspelled, so it looks like teenagers. End bold. Point 1. The enhanced status issue. End bold. A teen is consumed with figuring out their identity. Picture a group of teens at a camp or a youth group with a charismatic young leader. Everyone looks up to that leader. If that leader singles someone out, that person gets enhanced status. This makes the youth pastor very attractive. When someone whom the wider church has said is mature and worthy of trust singles you out as the most interesting/worthy of attention, that makes you feel like an adult, which again is one of the main aims at this stage of life. A good rule of thumb is to ask, bold, italicized, would she have been interested in him if he was just a 24-year-old in the pews, and bold and italics. Chances are she likely would not have given him a second look. He isn't part of the dynamics of group status. That's a problem. Point 2, in bold. The spiritual authority issue. The youth pastor/camp counselor has been appointed by her spiritual authorities to teach her about God. They presumably have been to Bible school. They have dedicated their life to God in a visible way that a 24-year-old mechanic hasn't. When that person singles you out and says, quote, I can sense God doing something big in your life, end quote, or, quote, I can sense that God is nudging me towards you, end quote, that carries weight. She has been told to honor him as her authority who hears from God. Who is she to say no to him? In bold, a spiritual leader singling out someone they are in authority over to give them special attention, particularly with the understanding that God is somehow involved in their special relationship, is also a sign of clergy abuse. End bold. Clergy abuse, for anyone unfamiliar with the term, describes a situation in which someone who is a pastor, priest, or any kind of spiritual leader in a church setting uses their authority over a congregant to take advantage of them in some way. When we consider relationships in which there is a hierarchy of authority, such as the youth group leader and a teenager who attends that youth group, that is a situation where there is no equality between the two people involved. Without equality in a relationship, there is no ability to consent. So when a clergy member or church leader pursues a romantic or sexual relationship with someone they are in spiritual authority over, that is clergy abuse. Point 3, in bold, the small world issue. The youth pastor has likely attended Bible college with thousands of others. They have likely moved cities for college or for work and have gained real-world experience that was unavailable to them before they left their homes in high school. A 17 or 18-year-old has a very small frame of reference. They likely don't have a lot of peers outside their community. Even if they've traveled, they likely haven't made friends outside their school/church/camp circle. Would that 17 or 18-year-old find this person as attractive if they had had more opportunities to meet others with different life experiences? The youth group leader and the youth group attendee are firmly set into two very different life stages, which gives the youth group leader even more power in the relationship. The teenager in this scenario simply does not have the wisdom that comes with real-world experience that would tell her that it is potentially very dangerous to pursue a relationship with a spiritual authority figure. Point 4, in bold, the fetish issue. End bold. Fetish is a harsh word here, but I'm not sure what other one to use. In bold, we need to ask why a youth pastor, who has seen more of the world, who has met many peers, would single out someone who has not had these life experiences. End bold. Why does a youth pastor or camp counselor want to marry someone who hasn't had the opportunity to look at the bigger world yet? What is it about them that finds naivete and lack of experience attractive? I find this a major red flag. Point 5, in bold, the mismatched maturity issue. End bold. If an 18-year-old youth group member is at the same maturity level as a 24-year-old youth pastor, then it is very likely that when she is 24, she will surpass him. A mature 18-year-old is on a trajectory. She hasn't finished maturing yet, while he may have stalled. Parentheses, after all, he's the one who is targeting an 18-year-old girl. End parentheses. What if she had gone out in the world and pursued education? Would she still want to marry him once she has finished a master's degree in biochem? Side note, It is interesting that she brings up biochem because Charla Hintz, Mike Hintz's wife, was supposed to finish her degree in the sciences, especially because she was very nerdy and she was very passionate about the sciences. I'm currently reading more about the relationship in Charla Hintz's book that details her life after Mike admitted to her that he had been having an inappropriate relationship with a teenager. And based off of what I've read so far, I believe she finished it but never got the chance to use it. But I could be mistaken on that. I continue reading. In bold, we need to recognize how vulnerable teenage girls are to the advances of older men. In bold. Some of these issues apply not just to youth pastors, but to any age difference like this. It's very important to make sure a girl has had some life experience outside of her small social circle and knows what she wants to do for education before she commits to an older man. In bold, but when that man is also a youth pastor, this is even more important. End bold. Recently, Jonna Harris. Side note, that's interesting that it's spelled Johnnna for Jonna, because below in the screen capped Twitter post it says John and that's spelled JOHN-UH. Anyway, I continue reading. Podcaster and advocate for survivors of spiritual abuse asked on X, formerly Twitter, about a big-name pastor who began dating his now wife while she was 17, and he was a 23-year-old camp counselor. Many were saying it's okay. The parents agreed. Again, going back to the Twitter post that is screen capped here, at John Ray tweeted, if you found out that one of your faith heroes / pastors met his wife when he was an adult, pastoring her at camp when she was a minor and pursued her, would that affect the way you viewed them? Is this disqualifying? What would you, use in all caps, do with that information? This was tweeted on August 5th, 2024 at 5:01 p.m. and as of the screen grab, it had 662 hearts and at least 149 replies. Going back to the article, Sheila says, here's a bit more of the thread. In quotes. If you found out that one of your faith heroes / pastors met his wife when he was an adult, pastoring her at camp when she was a minor and pursued her, would that affect the way you viewed them? Is this disqualifying? What would you do with that information? Again, you is in all caps. What if I add the detail that the pastor was a college graduate and the teen was going into their senior year of high school? If you found out that people you respected were aware and are currently serving on staff at his church, would you encourage them to call this out? End quote. Jonna Harris on X, linked here. Section in bold. Many parents, though, are enamored with the youth pastor for reasons number 1 and number 2. End bold. They believe their daughter is mature and special, so to have a youth pastor single her out confirms this belief. In bold, but would she not be even more mature and special at 22 with more life experience? End bold. Why would there be a need to have a young girl give up opportunities to learn, travel, grow, and experience the world that this older man had the chance to experience for himself? This is not a warning against early marriages. I married young, so did both my daughters. The difference was we had all moved away and lived on our own, learning to budget, etc. We had all pursued higher education. We had all gotten involved in multiple social circles, and none of us married someone in spiritual authority over us. When I was talking about this on social media, though, many pushed back, saying that they knew many couples who were happily married today who started out this way. In bold, Just because you know couples like this who look happy doesn't mean it's a good idea. And bold. First, you assume they're doing great because of what you see on the outside, but you don't actually know. The number of memoirs coming out right now of women telling how they were being controlled and nobody knew is astounding. We only see the outside of a relationship. Second, let's remember who these women are. Often the youth pastor targets the most mature, responsible, overachiever girl who knows her Bible. What kind of wife will this girl later make? Likely one who can keep everything together and looking great by sheer force of her will. In bold, she wants this marriage to work. She is going to make sure it does. End bold. So she may deprioritize her own needs to make sure her husband and kids do well. In bold, but remember, she married into a relationship where she was already just the secondary supporting character. End bold. He was the one in authority with the calling from God. She was the one to support that calling. She wasn't old enough to have established or pursued a calling of her own. She married so she could fit into his world, not so that they could create a world where both could flourish. In bold, when we say that, quote, they're doing great as a couple, end quote, then do we truly mean that each of them is flourishing in their own callings, end bold, or do we mean that they look happy on the outside and the kids look happy? Had she waited a few years to get married, or had she married a peer who was her equal, then her callings and dreams would likely have been emphasized too. When I look at couples like these, what I hear is, quote, she's such a great support to him, end quote, or, quote, they have such a great home life, end quote, or, quote, the kids are so happy, end quote. I don't hear, quote, he supports her calling, end quote, or, quote, he's sacrificed so she can pursue her dreams too, end quote. It's not just a question of whether the couple is happy together, you see. It's also whether, in bold, had this youth pastor not targeted her before she was fully an adult, end bold, also end italics, she would have had the opportunity to pursue the dreams and gifts that God had given her personally. It's a question of whether she could have had a life where she was not mainly a supporting character to her husband's life. In bold, and I wonder if this is the real reason that so many youth pastors target the girls in their youth groups, end bold, parentheses, or camp directors / counselors target teens, end parentheses. Side note, I want to also bring up Professor Andrew Schmiege, a Wells professor that married a teenage student that was recently nominated for and was accepted for a position at Michigan Lutheran Seminary. He targeted a just barely adult young woman, and she felt the need to marry him because he apparently thought that the best living situation for her was not at her mother's house, not an adult's house of the same sex as this young woman. No, he thought it was appropriate to move this young woman into his house and then marry her to cover the scandal. Both coverage of his story and Mike Hintz's will be in the videos that I did, will be linked at the end of this video. I continue reading. Youth pastors may target youth group members so that they can marry someone whose life will revolve around them, rather than marrying a peer who will expect that he will also sacrifice for her dreams and callings too. They don't want an equal relationship. They want adulation. When you see a couple who married under these circumstances and she doesn't have much of an identity other than, quote, so-and-so's wife, end quote, and you think they're doing great, just remember, maybe God had more planned for her. Maybe he wanted to bless her with a husband who would support her as she supported him. In bold, no matter how well she supports her husband, ask yourself, could she have had someone who supported her too? And is that really a success story if she doesn't? And bold. Bold. Final section. Parents, it's a red flag if the youth pastor / camp counselor takes an interest in your daughter. And bold. Church members, if a youth pastor thinks a 17-year-old is, quote, mature, end quote, question why they find lack of life experience attractive. And everyone, remember power dynamics. This isn't okay. In bold, what do you think? Have you seen these relationships in real life? What has been the church's reaction? The families? Let's talk in the comments. End bold. The link to this is in the description below, so please feel free to check out the article and comment with your own experiences. Please also feel free to comment with your own experiences in the comments to this YouTube video. Like I said before, the two stories that stand out to me are Mike Hintz's as well as Professor Schmiege's, and the videos that I did covering both of their egregious behavior will be linked at the end of this video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.